is Felicity Thou, and I'm a member of the Flip and Pain team. Flip and Pain is a public health campaign sharing a scientific understanding of persistent pain with people affected by it. And this event in particular is supported by Manx Care for residents of the Isle of Man. Tonight's webinar is being recorded and it will be available to watch again and to share with others via our YouTube channel within the next day or two. We'll be hearing from Professor Cormac Ryan, a Flip and Pain community pain champion and Professor of Clinical Rehabilitation at Teesside University. This will be followed by a question and answer session where we'll also be joined by two people who live with pain themselves and two specialist healthcare professionals. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. You'll notice the Q&A box on your screen. Use that at any time throughout the presentation to put your questions in there, and we'll come to those at the end of Cormac's presentation. Just a note that we can't answer any individual medical questions about you personally, so do make your question as broad as you can. There's a survey that you will have either seen in the build up to this event or in the pre-event email. If you've not filled in that survey yet, it's going into the chat just now. There's also a QR code that was coming up before, so fill that questionnaire in for us now if you can. We're much appreciative of your efforts there, and then we'll remind you about a post-event survey after the event. So before we start, we always like to set the scene by hearing from someone who has flipped their understanding of pain over time. Fiona will also be joining us later for the question and answer session, but we'll share a little bit about her experience now. Fiona, I'll hand over to you.
Hi, thank you very much. And yes, I'm Fiona, and it's lovely to be here tonight and lovely to have so many people joining us. You're in for a treat. Yeah, my experience of pain is a big one. I had 25 years of pain. And I can say with confidence that the things that we're going to talk about tonight are things that might very well help you. So I fell off a horse at the age of 11 and I ended up experiencing 25 years of pain, and that pain changed over time. Sometimes it was severe, sometimes it was less bad, but it was very unpleasant to live with, and it had a huge impact on me. So I used a wheelchair at my worst, and my schooling and my working life was then very badly affected. And these days I am mostly pain-free. I'm very lucky. I'm able to hike, I'm able to dance, I swim, I'm able to socialise with friends, travel, all sorts of things that I couldn't do for many years. I was very, very restricted. So yes, lucky me, you might be thinking, good for you, but actually for all of the years that I was in pain, I thought that that was something that I couldn't recover from. And I tried really hard, as I'm sure lots of people tonight have done so as well, to accept any help that was offered to me, threw myself into it, tried to be positive. I saw lots of different medical specialists, tried lots of different medications, had medical interventions, and always trying to hope that a cure would come along and be positive, but nothing got rid of the pain altogether. So yeah, it seemed very unlikely that my miracle would happen, but actually I was wrong, and here I am, and I am recovered. And I'm in touch with lots of other people too who've also used this science to either recover completely. Some of them, it's about they've made some improvements in their pain and they live a more meaningful life maybe with their pain and better quality of life. And for some people, it's maybe they've used these ideas just to understand themselves and their pain a little bit better, which in itself can be really helpful, I think. And so what is the science? Well, that's what you're going to hear about tonight from our brilliant speakers. And I think all I would say is that this might be the first time that you've heard anything like the things that we're going to say tonight. And it's just really important to have an open mind and to listen and to understand that everybody's journey is different. And I'd encourage you to really go away and have a think about what you hear tonight, and have a lot of compassion for yourself, really. If you live with pain, pain is a very difficult thing to live with. And if you work with people in pain, to have compassion for them and the courage that they have to find every single day to manage their pain. And myself and Flip and Pain, all the people tonight, we all know that if you're in pain, your pain is real and you deserve lots of care and support and compassion. But actually, just because your pain is real doesn't mean to say that it can't change. And that's the exciting thing about all of this. So yes, to start properly, I'm going to hand back to Felicity, who's going to introduce our first speaker.
Thanks very much, Fiona. And you can put your questions to Fiona in the question session at the end. So yes, I am delighted to introduce Professor Cormac Ryan, who'll be talking to us this evening. Cormac, over to you.
Lovely. Oh, can you see me? Can you hear me? Lovely. Hi there, everyone. It's a real pleasure and honor to be speaking to you today. I'd like to start by thanking Fiona for coming and sharing her story. As Felicity said, we always like to start these events by talking to someone and hearing from someone who's has lived experience of persistent pain and who has had their life changed by the information that you're going to hear about tonight. And you'll hear that change doesn't happen overnight. It happens at different rates for different people. But it always inspires me to hear those stories like Fiona's, because she will have been in a really bad place at times. And I'm sure people listening on this webinar tonight will have been and perhaps are in really bad places. And it's really inspiring to hear that there is hope. There is always hope. There is always room for improvement. And I think if you take nothing away from this seminar but that, I think it will be time well spent. So thank you, Fiona, for that introduction. A little bit about me to begin. So my name is Cormac Ryan. I'm Professor of Clinical Rehabilitation at Teesside University. I'm also the Community Pain Champion for the Flippin' Pain campaign, a physiotherapist and a pain scientist. Next slide, please. I always like to begin by declaring my conflicts of interest. So I'm a named inventor of a medical device for the treatment of phantom limb pain, and I'm also leased out by Teesside University to be the community pain champion for the Flippin' Pain campaign, which is run by Connect Health. So whilst I don't get paid directly for my involvement in the campaign, my university does. Next slide, please. With all of these conflicts of interest, I had hoped that right about now I'd be sunning myself in some sunny Mediterranean port, but unfortunately, next slide, please, the reality is not quite as rosy. Next slide, please. So, unfortunately, I'm not actually there in person with you guys on the Isle of Man. When we visited earlier this year, we had such a wonderful time. Everyone was so friendly, so kind, and it was just a wonderful 2 to 3 day experience. Wish I was there rather than sitting in my bedroom in Yorkshire delivering this presentation, but hopefully it won't be too long before we're back there again. Okay, next slide, please. So pain is a huge problem. It affects 30 to 50% of people in the UK, and it accounts for a quarter of the years lived with disability. It's a major player when it comes to disability in the UK. So what have we been doing to try and tackle it? Next slide, please. Well, we've taken the approach of throwing lots and lots of biomedical based interventions towards its treatment. So we've really increased the amount of scanning we're doing for persistent pain conditions. Next slide, please. We've also increased the amount of opioids people are taking, 127% increase over the past 30 years or so in opioid prescriptions here specifically in the UK. Next slide, please. And we've also seen a huge increase in surgical approaches. So we've more than doubled the amount of surgery we're doing, again, in the UK for persistent pain conditions like low back pain. So with all of this huge influx of treatments, surely things are getting much better. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, the reality is no, things are not improving. In fact, we're seeing a continued increase in the prevalence of persistent pain conditions and its associated disability. So the question is, why are we persisting in this path? Why do we continue to use all these scans, all these opioids, all these surgeries and other sort of really sort of invasive interventions and medical interventions, when they don't seem to be working, and indeed they're actually contrary to what best practice guidelines say we should do, just doesn't really seem to make any sense. Well, if we begin to unpick the general understanding of persistent pain, it might begin to make a bit more sense. Next slide, please. If we were to ask the average person on the street, how do they understand pain? When I asked Google to give me a picture of the average man on the street, this is the picture that Google gave me. I can't help but feel that Google has an unrealistic picture of what the average man on the street looks like. But nonetheless, I believe that the average person on the street believes three key things about pain. The pain only occurs when you are injured. The greater the injury, the greater the pain will be. And persistent pain means that injury has not healed. I want you to reflect for a moment on how much you agree with those statements. Now, if you agree with those statements, the scans, the surgeries, the opioids, they all make sense. And it's natural that those would be the go-to things that people would look for. However, these are all myths. They're all misconceptions. They are all untrue. They are common misunderstandings about persistent pain, and those common misunderstandings perpetuate an approach to persistent pain that is very biomedical and is not actually in keeping with what the best science says we should be doing. So I'm going to come back to these three statements and what at the end, and what I will hopefully find is that, or what you will hopefully find is that you will agree with these statements less. You'll see how they're misunderstandings, and you will have shifted how you think about pain. Next slide, please. Over the past 70 years or so, the scientific community has learned a great deal about persistent pain, but very little of that information has trickled through to the person on the street. And as such, there are many myths and misunderstandings like the ones we've just seen, and those act as barriers to good management. We believe that knowledge is the key to success. If we can take this scientific information, put it into the hands of the people who need it the most, the person with pain, their friends, their relatives, their healthcare professional, their employer, we believe we can bust many of these myths, leading to better pain management for all. Next slide, please. That's what the Flippin' Pain campaign is trying to do. We're trying to change the way that people think about, talk about, and treat persistent pain. Next slide, please. And we're trying to do it by communicating our 6 key messages. That persistent pain is common and can affect anyone. Hurt does not necessarily mean harm. Everything matters when it comes to pain. Medicines and surgeries are often not the answer. Understanding your pain can be key, and recovery is possible. And I'm going to go through each of these one at a time to briefly to kind of communicate this new understanding. Next slide, please. I'm going to start off with persistent pain is common and can affect anyone. Next slide, please. When you're in the queue at Tesco's, it's easy to think that you are the only person with pain because pain is invisible. And when you look around, you can't necessarily see whether other people have it or don't have it. And as such, it can feel like a really, really isolating condition, and that can make it worse. However, actually, 30 to 50% of people in the UK suffer from persistent pain. So you're not alone. In that queue, there will be other people with persistent pain. And simply knowing that can help you to feel less isolated and can help you to kind of feel that that problem is a little bit shared and you're not alone. So that's the first simple key message. That brings us on to key message number 2. They're not all that brief. One other thing to say briefly about the previous message is that because pain is invisible, often people don't feel believed, and there's a lot of stigma around persistent pain. And understanding this science helps you to actually kind of bust that stigma and understand how pain works and understand that the pain is absolutely real and it can help you to, not just you to understand that, but other people to understand that as well. Because again, that can be part of the isolating element of it, that stigma. But better information can help to remove that stigma. Okay, sorry. On to key message number 2. Hurt doesn't always mean harm. So what do I mean by that? Next slide, please. Well, it's really nicely illustrated by this case study, which was published in the British Medical Journal in 1995, which is one of the most respected medical journals in the world. And in this case study, it tells the story of a builder who jumped from one platform to another. And as he did so, a 6-inch nail went up through his boot. He was in absolute agony. He was rushed to accident and emergency, where they gave him some really strong painkillers like fentanyl, but it had no effect whatsoever. They brought him into the operating room, they cut off his boot, and what they found was, miraculously, the nail had passed between his toes, so there wasn't a scratch on him. He was completely uninjured, yet he was in terrible, terrible pain. It's a perfect example of hurt does not mean harm. You can have terrible pain with little or no tissue injury. And the reverse is true. Next slide, please. This is a case study published in the journal Injury Prevention. In this case study, the story is a gentleman wandered into accident and emergency complaining of dizziness and headaches. When they scanned him, they found a 12-centimeter knife stuck in his head. It turned out that the night before he had been a little bit tipsy. He'd fallen over. And when he woke up the following morning, he could find the handle to his favourite knife, but he couldn't find the blade. No prizes for guessing where the blade was. 2 days later, they removed it, and he left in pretty good shape for a guy who had a knife stuck in his head not too recently. Again, it's a perfect example that hurt does not necessarily mean harm. Here we have quite significant tissue injury with little or no pain at the time. Pain and injury are two separate things. They sometimes hang out together, but often they do not, and over time they drift further and further apart. And you will have experienced this yourself. Think about times when you've noticed that you're bleeding, maybe coming off a football pitch, or after you've been cooking or doing something like that, and just noticing that you're bleeding, but you hadn't been aware that you were bleeding. Or waking up with a stonking great bruise and going, where did that come from? I have no recollection of that happening before. Here we have injury without pain. Pain and injury are two separate things. So how is that actually possible? Well, it's all to do with the third key message, which is that everything matters when it comes to pain. This is the key message. If you can get this message, you're on to a winner. Okay, next slide, please. So what do we mean by everything matters when it comes to pain? Well, pain is a biopsychosocial experience influenced by biological, psychological, and social things. But I'm not going to talk about pain initially to explain this. Instead, I'm going to talk about vision and how our visual system works, because vision is a biopsychosocial experience. What we see is influenced by biological, psychological, and social things. Next slide, please. Take a look at this cube. You'll see two squares are circled. The top square appears to be a brown colour. The side square appears to be an orange colour. They do not appear to be the same colour. If they do appear to be the same colour for you, that's a worrying thing. I've done this about 10,000 times, and only once someone has said that they appear to be the same colour. I think that person didn't really understand what I was asking. But they should appear to be two different colours. Now, if we move on to the next slide, what you'll see is the same cube and the same squares, but now they will both appear to be the same colour, both brown. The side square will appear to have magically changed colour from orange to brown. Now, here's the key piece of information. I haven't changed the colour of that side square. The only thing I've done is changed the information around it. So I've applied that white circle around it. Otherwise, the square itself stays the exact same colour. So how is that possible? How can something appear to just change color all of a sudden? Can we just show it happening one more time? Can we go back? And can we go forward? And back? And forward? And to the side? Only messing, there is no to the side. Okay, right. If we go on to the next slide, let's see if we can try and explain how this works. Well, light reflects off images in the surrounding area, goes in through the lens of our eye and is projected onto the retina, where it stimulates little receptors. And those receptors convert that light energy into electrical energy. And that electrical energy flows up the optic nerve to the part of the brain that deals with vision. Now, I want you to imagine that in there is a little girl called Sheila. Sheila is surrounded by millions of jigsaw puzzle pieces, and she uses those jigsaw puzzle pieces to create in real time an image of what's going on around you. And that is what you see 100% of the time, all of the time. What you see is not necessarily what is there. It's your subconscious brain's interpretation of what is there. And yes, it is influenced by the light information that comes in, but it's also influenced by previous experiences, expectations, beliefs, attitudes. Everything matters when it comes to what you see. So if we take that piece of information and now apply it back to that illusion. Next slide, please. If we look at this cube, look to the left of it, and you'll see what appears to be a shadow or shaded area. That suggests that from the opposite side, there's a light source. Now, the reality is there's not. This is a 2D image. It doesn't give off shade, but it has been cleverly drawn to give that impression. And Sheila is not designed to deal with 3D images. Sheila is from our caveman ancestors. She's used to dealing with 3D images. So she assumes that that is indeed shadow, and there's a light source from the opposite side. So when she receives the light information coming in, the same amount of light information will be reflecting off both of those circled squares, because in truth, they are both the same color. They are both brown. Let's just confirm that by going forward. Thanks very much, and go back. However, when that light information goes all the way up to Sheila, Sheila would usually say both the same color, both the same amount of energy, thus must be the same color. Thus, I'm going to give 2 brown squares as the image. Then she goes, hang on, that side square is in a shaded area. It's in a darker area. So it must be that that square is a brighter color. So she predicts that that side square is an orangey yellow. And thus that is the image she creates for each and every one of us. Now, as soon as we change the environment, so if we move forward, so if we put this white sheet around, we take out the context of the shadow. So Sheila no longer has to adjust her prediction based upon the impact of the shadow. Now she gets the same amount of light energy from both squares, predicts they're both the same color, both brown, and thus that is the image that she creates for us, for each and every one of us, 100% of the time, all of the time. But here's a key piece of information. Even though we all now know consciously that that side square is brown, the same color as the top square, as soon as we take away the white sheet, if we go back one, Sheila immediately turns it back to being orange. In other words, we don't consciously control what we see. Sheila is in charge of what we see 100% of the time, all of the time. Now, I want to bring this forward to talk about pain, because I want you to start thinking all our senses work this way. Everything we see, hear, taste, they're all creations of our subconscious mind. And yes, they're influenced by things coming in from the external, but they are creations of our mind. That's where we create our experiences. Next slide, please. So I want to introduce you to Assumpta. Next slide, please. Assumpta is Sheila's first cousin on her mother's side. Assumpta is the part of the brain that deals with pain. Okay, and I like to depict her as Lady Justice with her blindfold and her weighing scales. When Assumpta receives danger messages, she asks the question, how dangerous is this really? And if, on balance, she believes the situation is dangerous, she will want to draw the conscious person's attention to it and get them to do something about it. And thus she will produce pain. In contrast, if she believes the situation is not dangerous, then she'll not want to draw the conscious person's attention to it. She'll not want them to do something about it, and thus she won't produce pain. It's as easy and as difficult to get your head around as that. But what scientific evidence can I give to show that Assumpta exists? Well, there's lots and lots of studies to support this, but my personal favourite is one that was done by Irene Tracy about 10 years ago from Oxford. Irene is like the Ed Sheeran of the pain science world. Next slide, please. In her study, which was set up a little bit like this scene from Goldfinger, participants were asked to lie or sit on a plinth or table, and a laser was shone onto one of 3 areas of their foot. When the laser was shone onto area 1, all the scientists in the room went, yeah, that's perfectly fine, that's nice and safe, we can use that area for the rest of the study. They then moved the laser onto area 2, and all the scientists in the room went, ooh, no, we can't use that area there. The skin is very thin, it could cause a burn, it's too dangerous, we can't use it for the rest of the study. They then shone the laser onto area 3, and all the scientists in the room went, not sure about this. We think this area is sufficiently safe for the laser, but we're going to monitor it very, very closely, just in case we're wrong. Then, for the next hour, they delivered 120 stimuli, 60 to area 1, the low threat area or the safe area, and 60 to area 3, the high threat area or the unsafe area. Each time, after each stimulus, they asked the patients to say how much pain they were experiencing, and if they did, whether they experienced pain or not, and then if they did experience pain, to ask them to rate that pain on a 0 to 10 scale. Next slide, please. So what did they find? Well, what they found was when the laser was shone onto the low threat area, participants were less likely to report the stimulus as painful. Furthermore, when they felt pain on both areas, they felt lower levels of pain in the low threat area. Now, here's the key piece of information. There was actually no difference whatsoever between the low threat area and the high threat area. Both were perfectly safe, equally safe. The only difference was participants' belief that one set of stimuli were safe and one set of stimuli were dangerous. Now, have a think about what that means just for a moment, because it doesn't mean that how we think about pain influences how we respond to it. That may well be true, but that's not what this means. What this study shows us is that what we think about pain and what we think about stimuli actually influences how we experience pain. And that's a really, really exciting finding, because we can change how we understand pain. And by default, that suggests we can change how we experience pain. And that's a really, really exciting thing. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to now try and biologize a little bit of what we've just talked about. Okay, and I'm going to use the example of hanging up a picture. This is always a tricky one with the old next slide element to it. So we'll do our best. So imagine you're trying to hang up a picture, and instead of hitting the nail, you hit your thumb. This causes a danger message to be sent from the thumb all the way to your spinal cord along the first nerve. Now, it's really important to say that it doesn't send a pain message. There are no such thing as pain receptors or pain fibers sending pain messages. Instead, we have danger receptors sending danger messages, okay, and completely unconsciously. When that first danger message reaches the spinal cord, it passes on that danger message to the second order neuron, the next step in the path. And it goes all the way up, and it's passed along the gap using little chemicals called neurotransmitters. They pass on the message. And the message goes all the way up to Assumpta, up in the brain, up to our subconscious brain. And Assumpta asks the question, how dangerous is this really? And she puts it all the pieces of information together in a split second, out with your conscious awareness. She's saying, right, well, he's doing DIY. He always injures himself when he's doing DIY. He's got a hammer in one hand. All the danger signals are coming from the opposite thumb. Chances are he's just hit that thumb with the hammer. He's in backswing. He's probably going to hit it again. We need to step in here. We need to do something about that. We need this thumb. We like this thumb. It's so useful. We need to step in to protect him. What can we do? Well, I know what we can do. Let's produce lots of pain in that thumb where we perceive the danger to be. That will draw his attention to it. That will get him to do something about it and take action. And thus at that point, the conscious you handsome devil, you become aware of the problem and you do something about it. That you might jump up and down, you might swear and curse. There's actually really good science to show that swearing and cursing helps, but that's a totally different slideshow. And you take action. You might put on a band-aid, you might go to your GP, you might go to accident and emergency, but you do something. You take protective action. Now, Assumpta is not finished there. If she believes the situation is more dangerous than the amount of danger messages coming up would suggest, she can send down excitatory messages, which actually act as a positive feedback loop and can increase the amount of danger messages going up to your spinal cord. As a result, if she then receives more danger messages, she's likely to believe the situation is even more dangerous and therefore more likely to want to protect you and thus more likely to produce pain. In contrast, she can also, if she believes the situation is less dangerous than the amount of danger messages coming to her, she can send down inhibitory messages, which actually reduce the amount of danger messages coming up the spinal cord. And this can as a result, if she receives fewer danger messages, she's likely to believe the situation is less dangerous, therefore less need to draw attention to it and get something done about it, and therefore less need to produce pain. So she has enormous control over that alarm system. You don't consciously control it, but she does. And she is influenced by your thoughts and your beliefs and your worries and your anxieties and your fears and your understanding of pain. Next slide, please. Now that's very much in the short term, but what about in the long term? Okay, what happens in long-term pain? Well, in persistent pain, the alarm system essentially becomes supercharged. The pain alarm system simply can't handle all the danger messages that want to be sent. So it changes chemically to become better at sending danger messages. It's a little bit like the post office at Christmas time. Next slide, please. Well, next clip on, lovely, just stay there. When we were last in the Isle of Man, I put forward the question, what does the post office do during Christmas time to handle all the additional postage requirements and all the additional messages that need to be sent? At every session, the response from the crowd was go on strike, which only ever happened in the Isle of Man because it would appear that a major strike happened earlier that winter. But if we assume it's not to go on strike, traditionally what the post office does is it increases the amount of workers, and those workers work for longer hours during the Christmas period. And our alarm system kind of does something similar. These nerves, they adapt by becoming better at sending danger messages. And as such, they fire even with very, very little stimulus. And as such, people can experience pain with very, very little stimulation. So things like soft touch or gentle movement are enough to trigger the pain alarm system. The system essentially becomes overprotective, sensitized. Now, many of you who are attending here tonight who have persistent pain will have noticed perhaps that your pain started in one area but now is experienced in a larger area, or perhaps has moved to a different area. So what happens there is, as one area becomes sensitized, one set of connections becomes sensitized, all of these neurons, they overlap, they crisscross. So if you sensitize one, by default, you actually sensitize lots of different connections, and thus this can result in an experience that the pain moves or is coming from a different area, referred pain, as it were. Can you relate to that? Is that something that you've experienced yourself, that pain moving or getting bigger? If you can, well, then that's a suggestion that you've got this sensitized, overprotective alarm system going on. Next slide, please. So, and again, so how do we perhaps communicate this key point? Next slide, please. How do we communicate this, what is kind of complicated pain science, into a kind of a more simple, straightforward message? Well, there's loads of ways one can do that, but I often find that metaphor or story is the best way of doing it. And clinically, this is a story that I always use, which patients seem to be able to relate to. And it's trying to get across these sort of three key messages: that pain is a marker of perceived threat. It's not so much due to tissue damage, but increased sensitivity of our body's natural alarm system. And the purpose of that pain is to protect you. I'm going to say that one more time. The purpose of your pain is to protect you. Okay, so here's the story. And it's a story of an oversensitive car alarm. Imagine you've got this brand new car. You love the car. It's your pride and joy. You drive up to work, you park it outside, and you go up your 4 flights of stairs into your office. A little bit like the office behind me. I'll let you into a secret. It's not a real office. It's just a pretend office. Look, it's not there. You go up, you sit down, and you start typing away. 2 minutes later, a burglar looks out from behind some bushes, says, "I'm going to steal that car radio." Runs over, breaks the window, grabs the car radio, and runs off down the street. 2 minutes later, the car alarm goes off. You jump up, you look out your window, but the guy is gone. He's way, way, way in the distance. You run down your 4 flights of stairs, you call the police, you call the RAC, the police come, take a statement, and the RAC come, they replace your window, they replace your car radio. Then the guy says, "I'm going to give you a little tip. Got to turn up the sensitivity of your alarm system. Now, the next time someone tries to mess with your alarm or with your car, they're going to get a rude awakening." You say, "Thanks very much." Off he drives. You go back up your 4 flights of stairs. You sit yourself down and you start typing away. 2 minutes later, the same burglar looks out from behind the same bushes and says, "Right, I'm going to steal that car radio as well." He goes over to it, but as soon as he touches it, the car alarm goes off. You jump up, you look out, you shout, "Oi!" And you can see right into the whites of his eyes. He gets scared, he runs off because he knows he's been rumbled. You go down your 4 flights of stairs and you're delighted to find that your car is in perfect shape. There's not a scratch on it. And you thank your lucky stars for that RAC guy. You turn off the alarm, but you leave the sensitivity right up because it's doing such a great job keeping your car safe. You back up your 4 flights of stairs and you start typing away. 2 minutes later, car alarm goes off. You jump up, you look out, and you see this elderly couple have just walked past your car and just glanced off it. Now, your car was in absolutely no danger, but it was enough to set off the alarm, and the alarm sounds identical to what it did when the window was broken. You go down your 4 flights of stairs, you turn off the alarm, but you leave the sensitivity right up because it's doing such a great job keeping your car safe. You go back up your 4 flights of stairs and you start typing away. 2 minutes later, car alarm goes off again. You look out, you see this huge pigeon sitting on your car. Obviously a deaf pigeon because the alarm hasn't scared him away. You go down your 4 flights of stairs, you shoo him before you can do his business on your car, and then you turn off the alarm itself, but you leave the sensitivity right up because it's doing such a great job keeping your car safe. You go back up your 4 flights of stairs and you start typing away. 2 minutes later, your car alarm goes off again. Your problem is no longer the broken window or the stolen car radio or the burglar. Your problem is this sensitized alarm system. And whilst it is doing a brilliant job keeping your car safe, stopping you from doing all the things that you need to do at work. Now, persistent pain works in a similar way. It's due to a sensitized alarm system, and it is doing a brilliant job protecting you, a brilliant job keeping your body safe, because it's far too sore to do anything even remotely dangerous to your tissues. The problem is it's also sore doing normal everyday activities that you need to do that are good for you and keep your body happy and healthy. Hopefully you can relate to that story. Hopefully it resonates with you and kind of has helped to bring home those key messages that we've just talked about, that pain is about protecting you, it's about keeping you safe, but in persistent pain, that protective pain system has become overprotective. It's become sensitized. And this can happen long after normal tissue healing has occurred, because tissues heal. Think about how long someone has been if you've been ever had a fracture or know someone who's had a fracture. Those tissues heal. They take, 6 to 12 weeks is the standard time frame, a little bit longer for some people, a little bit shorter for others, but they heal. But pain can linger long after normal tissue healing has occurred because of that sensitized system. Next slide, please. So why is this the case? Why are we designed this way? Would it not be so much easier if we simply had pain when we were injured and had no pain when we were not injured? Well, it would be simpler, but it would not be better. Think about the reverse sensors on a car. Either you've used them yourself or you will have seen other people use them. As you reverse the car and get closer to the wall behind you, the alarm beeps, and it beeps more frequently the closer you get. So if we action this out, here's the car. Oh, my phone will be the car. Oh, you can't see the phone. Oh, there we are. There's the phone. Okay. So here's the wall. So it gets closer to the wall. You can't see that. I'll just use my hand. For some reason, it's not hiding my hand. So here's the car getting closer to the wall. And this is how it normally works. Beep, 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 beep. Super. Now imagine a different scenario. Beep. That's not a very useful reverse sensor. How useful would it be if it didn't go off until you hit the wall behind you? That would be a terrible, terrible design. Now, our pain alarm system is designed in a similar way to those reversing sensors on a car. It's not about telling you you've hit the wall. It's about telling you you're in danger of hitting the wall. Now, let's imagine for a moment that this reversing sensor has become sensitized. So now as you get close to the wall, it goes beep here, even though there's so much more room to go back. and it makes it very, very hard to park anywhere because the sensor is always going off. In persistent pain, it's the same idea. It's so difficult to do your normal everyday task because the pain alarm system keeps going off. Next slide, please. Okay, now positive, accurate information can actually dampen down or reduce the sensitivity of the alarm system. In contrast, negative, inaccurate information can actually increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. Next slide, please. The best example I've come across of this is looking at scans for back pain. Now, I'm using back pain because that's where the most evidence is, but it's this kind of principle applies to pain in other areas of the body. So when we scan someone with back pain, we statistically increase the risk of them having a poor outcome. I'm going to say that once more. When we scan someone with back pain, we statistically increase the risk of them having a poor outcome. Why is that? Well, let's think it through logically. Imagine you go to your GP, you're a 50-year-old guy, you say, I've got some back pain. GP says, well, why don't we have a scan and see if we could find out what the problem is? Not an unreasonable suggestion. The scan is taken, it comes back and says, I see your problem, Jim. You've got spinal degeneration there. That's what's causing your pain. Now, have a think. Have you been told you've got spinal degeneration? Has someone you love been told they have spinal degeneration? What does that mean? What does it make you think? What does it make you feel? Does it make you feel safe? Does it make you feel secure? Does it sound like it's going to resolve or might improve? I'm not so sure it does. I think for most people, when they hear the word degeneration, they begin to think about things like crumbling, and they begin to think about things like we're wearing away, bone on bone, never going to get better, aging, only going to get worse, etc. Now, essentially, danger. Now, if we think about if that's what we are consciously thinking, that's also going to influence what Assumpta's thinking. And if Assumpta's worried, then what will she do to try and protect us? She only has one thing she can do, and that's produce more pain. And thus, it's perfectly logical that after hearing those negative scan results, she's going to increase pain to try and protect us. We don't consciously do it. She does it for us. And that is a really neat understanding as to why a scan might lead to a poorer outcome. Now, of course, the problem is we don't give the full story to our patients. This table here on the right gives a more complete picture. This table here represents the imaging findings for different age categories from 20 up to 80 for people with no back pain whatsoever. I'm going to say that again. This table shows us people with no back pain whatsoever. Look at the top row, which is disc degeneration. And if we look in the place that's got the gold square around it, we'll see that 80% of 50-year-olds with no back pain whatsoever experience or have found disc degeneration on their scan. In other words, disc degeneration is not necessarily a pathology. It's just a normal age-related change. It's like grey hairs or wrinkles, both of which I've got in abundance. They're the kisses of time. They are just parts of being a human being. However, we as healthcare professionals, we've pathologized these things and made them super scary. And it's really understandable to see how we've done that, because we only scan the people with back pain. So we bring someone in, scan them, say, oh, you've got disc degeneration, that's your problem. Next person comes in, you got back pain, let's scan you, disc degeneration, that's your problem. We're not scanning the people with no back pain whatsoever. Why would we? What would be the point? However, when we start doing it, as is the case in this table, what we find is, oh yeah, you've also got lots of disc degeneration, but you've got no pain. You've got lots of disc degeneration, but you've got no pain. We begin to see that in the past, we've been adding up 2 and 2 and getting 5. We've been making the a wrong assumption that this degeneration is or these imaging findings are what's causing the pain. But actually, there's very, very little relationship between what you see on the scan and the amount of pain someone with persistent pain is experiencing. Pain and injury are two very, very separate things. Pain and the state of the tissues are two very, very different things. These are just normal age-related changes. If you think about it being in a forest and looking at all the different tree trunks, you'll see such a wide variety. Some will be straight up, some will be to the left, some will be to the right, some will be, growing in all sorts of weird shapes and sizes and directions. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're unhealthy. It just shows the variability that's in nature. And that's what these scans also show us, the variability of nature. They don't show us necessarily the pathology, but that is what is being told and sold to patients. And that in itself can have a negative impact. Can we run the next slide to kind of show this? This is a patient delivering talking about the impact a scan had on them. Next slide, please.
I did actually get to have an MRI scan, and it showed up that I had degeneration of the discs in my lower back. It's the two lower vertebrae and one in the centre. What they've shown is more or less like bone was sort of rubbing on bone, really. So, okay, but the words they use, okay, I guess at the time frightened me. They use this word degeneration. I was thinking, God, well, if I've got something degenerative, and I better just be really careful what I do. So again, I had this thinking, well, if I've got something degenerating, I better not be too active in case I wear things out even more. And they also told me that when they showed me this, they said, oh, your spine is like a digestive biscuit. Again, you know, I thought if I move at all, I may make things worse. But by not moving, as I found out later on, I was making things a little bit worse because I was becoming more and more deconditioned.
Next slide, please. Imagine being told imagine being told your spine is like a digestive biscuit. What an awful use of language. They couldn't even use a robust biscuit like a hobnob, something with a bit of steel behind it. Poor old Pete was avoiding cups of tea in case his spine just magically dissolved. Is a perfect example of negative, inaccurate information. I know Pete well. He's still alive and kicking 20, 30 years on from that clip, and he manages his pain just as well now as he ever did. His spine didn't crumble away. Of course it didn't. It was a negative, inaccurate information, but it made his situation worse. And that explains why scans can make things worse. It's not the scan itself, it's what we say. And there's also studies to show that when the information is given more accurately, when it's explained that all the changes are normal age-related changes, actually you take away the negative impact of the scan. You don't necessarily have a positive effect, but you take away the negative impact. It's not the scan itself, it's what we're told about it. It's negative, inaccurate information that can make things worse. Next slide, please. And that's it. Everything matters when it comes to pain. Negative, inaccurate information can make things worse. Stress can make things worse. Next slide, please. Low mood can increase the sensitivity of your alarm system. Next slide, please. What friends and family think, if they're worried about the state of your tissues, that can increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. Next slide, please. If you feel financially insecure, that can increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. The science here blows me away. It's not even specific threat that can increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. Generalized threat, like feeling financially insecure, can increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. Next slide, please. Pain-related anxiety or worry, like being told that might happen if you were told your spine was like a digestive biscuit. Next slide, please. Poor diet, poor sleep, low levels of physical activity, all of these can increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. And I'm going to touch on this again towards the end. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're on to our fourth key message. I'm going to keep this really brief. Medicines and surgeries are often not the answer. I'm going to talk specifically about opioids. Next slide, please. When I think about pain, I often compare it to fire. Fire is really noxious. It's awful. It's terrible. It's hot. You just want it to go away. You don't care what's causing it. You just want it gone. But actually, understanding what is causing it helps you to choose the best fire extinguisher to get rid of it. Because if you use the wrong fire extinguisher, it might not just not put out the fire. It might actually make it worse. Now, if we can think about persistent pain in the same way, or pain in the same way. Next slide, please. Pain is just an awful thing. You just want it gone. You want it away. It's noxious. It's just bad. You want it gone. You don't care what's causing it. But actually, understanding what's causing it helps you to choose the right intervention. Now, if we look at opioids, for acute pain, that's short-term pain, pain that might happen, for example, immediately after a surgery or after you've been in a road traffic accident, perhaps. Opioids can be really, really helpful in the short term in those situations. But in the long term, they stop being effective. But the side effects can still be maintained. That's why the scientific evidence pushes us away from opioids. The next slide kind of shows us some of the stats on this. A major big study in 2018 demonstrated that opioids were only 7% more effective than placebo or dummy pills for people with persistent pain. Now, to put that in context, 10% is a minimally clinically important difference. If you're not achieving 10%, you're not at the races at all. So 7% just isn't worth your while, especially when all the associated side effects are there. Next slide, please. Whereas if we look at something like physical activity, this is a study that I was involved in where we found that for data from 3,500 people, a 20% improvement compared to control for an exercise intervention, and at 20% for both pain and disability, almost 3 times the amount of benefit you see with opioids, with no associated side effects. Now, I will of course highlight that when we exercise and we've got persistent pain, in the short term, that can increase our pain a little. That can be sore to do, and I don't want to whitewash over that at all. However, if we persist over the longer term, physical activity can help to reduce the sensitivity of that alarm system. Exercise is good for pain. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, last 2 key messages. Understanding your pain is key and recovery is possible. Next slide, please. So this is data from Professor Lorimer Mosley, who's based in Australia and runs our sister organisation, Pain Revolution. This is data from a clinic where everyone attending received pain science education, a little bit like the education that we're delivering tonight, and also a smorgasbord of active physical and psychological therapies. People had a range of different persistent pain conditions such as back pain and headaches. They had pain on average 5 out of 10, and they had it for about 6 years. And they monitored people over a 1-year period. What they found was, next slide please, for those who flipped their understanding of pain early on, after a month, little or no change in their pain, but at 6 months, things had improved a little. And by a year, things had improved quite a lot. In contrast, next slide, please, those who hadn't flipped their understanding, who had maintained quite an old school hurt equals harm understanding of persistent pain, their pain didn't change at all. They kept, it stayed relatively the same. This tells us 2 things. Firstly, that understanding your pain can be key. It doesn't mean that it is key. People might have improved for other reasons apart from a better understanding of their pain, but it does suggest this, and there's a growing body of evidence to demonstrate cause and effect in terms of understanding pain and improved feeling improved. The second thing is that recovery is possible. If recovery was not possible, that gold arm simply would not exist. But they do. Recovery is possible, but it's important when I'm talking about recovery within as part of our key message that I'm talking about recovery in a more broader sense. This slide here talks specifically about pain, but when we talk about it in the Flippin' Pain campaign, when we say recovery is possible, we mean in a more broader sense. Next slide, please. For some people, recovery might be a reduction in pain. For others, recovery might be just feeling better in yourself despite your pain, or being able to return to work despite your pain or your hobbies. It's different things to different people, but everyone can improve. Next slide, please. Okay, so when I delivered this talk to my next door neighbor, Janet said, "Oh, that's all really interesting, but what do I do now?" Really fascinating, really enjoyed it, but what do I do now? So this last slide is very much for Janet. The idea is to take this information and to use it as a roadmap for planning your recovery journey. Next slide, please. What if you were to lay out all the things that can influence your pain and you began to address them one at a time? Now, there's some things you can't change, like your genetics, for example. But what if we began to address those things you can change with a bit of self-care? What if we started off with anxiety and stress? What if we tackled those with things like mindfulness and meditation? What if we tackled diet with just improving it, some more fruit and veg, for example? What about poor sleep? What if we adapted things like sleep hygiene? Social support and work. Why we talked about pain being isolating. Why not try and reach back out to those old networks? Try and expand your social network again. And then lack of activity. What if we just increase our activity levels just a little bit? And that can be tiny things like walking to the end of your drive, for example. Any just tiny increases. These can all help to reduce the sensitivity of their alarm system. Now that journey, that sounds super easy there. Recovery can take time, but it might not take quite as long as you think it will take. Recovery can be really difficult, but it might not be as difficult as you think it will be. Okay, right, next slide, please. Right, before I finish up, I want to thank Professor Lorimer Mosley and Pain Revolution down in Australia for all their support that they give us. We're very much hanging on to their coattails. Next slide, please. I want to thank all the people involved in the campaign, especially the people with lived experience of pain. They are very much at the heart of what we do. And I'd like to thank you very much for listening. That's it for me.
Thanks very much, Cormac. Brilliant. We will now move on to the questions from the audience. Before I do that, I'd like to introduce our panelists, or even better, have them introduce themselves quite briefly there. So we've heard from Fiona. Fiona, we'll come back to you first, if that's all right, to just tell us a little bit about yourself and anything extra about your journey.
Anything extra? So yeah. So yes, as I said at the beginning, I lived with pain for 25 years and now not in pain, and I'm studying health psychology and working in the NHS, and yeah, just love talking about pain and how to improve it.
Excellent, thank you very much. Nikki, I shall come to you next.
Hi everybody, my name's Nikki. I suffered from severe trigeminal neuralgia for about 17 years, and it was finding this science that changed my life and affected a recovery compared to where I was severely disabled. And 2 months ago I cycled the English coast to coast 144 miles in 3 days, which was a bit mad, but that just shows the difference that my life has taken now that I can really live my life in a different way based on the foundation of this science. So
thank you very much, that's brilliant. We've also got 2 healthcare professionals with us this evening. Katie, I'll come to you first, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm Katie Rowe. I work with Manx Care, and my role is as a health liaison psychologist. So broadly speaking, I work with long-term conditions, and one of those areas is chronic pain.
Excellent, thank you very much. And Dr. Chris Barker next.
Thanks, Flick. Hi, everybody. My name's Chris Barker. I'm a clinical lead for chronic pain in the community over in Sefton, on kind of a little bit north of Liverpool. And my other job is I'm clinical lead for long COVID across Liverpool as well. My kind of passion really is in pain management. I've been in pain management probably about 20 years or so. I really love the kind of working with the transition of services. I want to try and modernise services, and what makes me come into work every day is working with people who are so motivated. The people that we see in our clinic have had pain for lots and lots of years, and they struggle deeply with things, and it inspires me that people come in, just get into clinic actually, because you know it's such an effort to do that, and it's even more inspiring when people want to work with you. So it's great. That's what gets me out in the morning time, and so yeah, it's great to be on this today. I like working with Flippin' Pain as well. Great bunch, so thank you.
Marvellous, thank you very much. Thanks all. Let's move to the questions from our audience. The question from Joe, I think probably everyone in the panel would have a good answer to this, so I will dip into you all if that's okay. Joe says that the car alarm analogy makes a lot of sense to him. He is finding he's living with pain that his alarm is going off when he's safe. How do we reduce that sensitivity? Let me come straight back to you, Chris, to talk about what the kind of the pain guidelines say about what the treatment should entail. Then let's come to Katie about the kind of psychological factors we could use. And then I'd also love to hear from Fiona and Nikki as well about what you find is useful to dial that alarm sensitivity down. So Chris, let's come to you first.
Like, thank you. It's a really important question, isn't it? And I was working with people on a session on pain management program today, and we covered exactly this. Actually, we were talking about how do we reduce sensitivity, and it is a really complex system. Cormac has done an amazing job, as he always does, to talk about the complexities of how our nervous system can become more sensitized. But kind of what it really boils down to, I think, looking at the evidence, is how do we move in the best possible way? So how do we look at the movements that we do? Are we as mobile as we can be for our condition? And how do we kind of get the most out of that? Because the more inputs that we have into our nervous system, generally, that helps our brain recalibrate, and it helps our spinal cord recalibrate its systems, so it doesn't send up tons more data to the brain. It sends normal data. So movement is a brilliant thing to do. It's kind of getting it in the right way, though. So working with a healthcare professional, particularly somebody who understands pain quite well, can be super helpful. There's lots of resources that will help you with that online. From the sensory side of things, also sensory techniques that help our nervous system ground itself again. So working with different textures, different sensations, different temperatures, stimulating areas in slightly different ways. Again, they're all clues to our brain about what our nervous system really should be doing and how it interprets the messages. So there's some kind of really basic things that help our peripheral nervous system and our spinal cord perhaps recalibrate. The next bit's the really complex bit, which is kind of in the top bit of our brain. And it's about kind of all those check-in areas that Cormac was talking about, you know, checking in with the sumpter. The areas that we know are super important for our nervous system making the right calculation about what this is meant to be, is what our brain's like in the here and now. Are we in a sense where we're kind of as relaxed as we can be, or are we a bit more, you know, keyed up with the daily events? What about our understanding of pain and what it means for us? Those really higher kind of function things, when we get those right, that can be super helpful. We know meditation is a good thing to be able to be involved in as well. These are the kind of things that help our nervous system recalibrate. Things that we've used in the past, I guess, like medicines or injections and those types of things, they I guess they kind of put a bit of a fog in our nervous system, and so in some ways they can help a bit on one angle, but on the other angle our nervous system doesn't function in the same way. So it's kind of like provides more of a smoke screen for pain. It doesn't allow us to kind of necessarily recover or improve things. It just kind of masks stuff a little bit. So medicines can be useful. Again, come up, talk about fire extinguisher type stuff. Again, getting the right fire extinguisher is important, because not every pain or not every fire will respond to those things. So I guess, in a really kind of long answer, more about how we help our nervous system recalibrate, ground itself, relearn about how our sensory system should decode stuff, and perhaps less so much about medicines. They can have a role, but the things that will move forwards is more of the other things that we talked about. So sorry, that was such a long answer, impossibly long.
No, it's brilliant to hear. It covers a lot of ground. We're talking about, the desensitizing the nervous system there, Katie. The brain and psychology must have something to do with that. As a psychologist, what would your input be to how we can help turn down that car alarm?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned really about like the nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, trying to look at ways in which we soothe the body, I think is really important. And that's a lot of what I suppose I'm talking about in some of the Live Well programs that we offer at the moment, in collaboration with some of the charities on Ireland. And I think, we don't attend to that enough really in healthcare. A lot of the language that's used and the way people talk about physical health problems and even mental health as well is very much about waging a war on, fighting the battle, waging the war on. And yet we know that's not a way to live your life. So a lot of the language I encourage in pain, when people are in chronic pain, is to talk in a very soothing way, to talk in a more compassionate way, and if they were to think about the person they loved most in the world who was suffering, how would they speak to them? So can they language to themselves and their most vulnerable part of themselves that's hurting in that kind of way? So there's a lot of movement, I think, in psychological sciences towards sort of acceptance, mindfulness, compassion based approaches. And actually, what do you notice? Not what does your mind tell you so much, but what do you notice? What's your experience in your body when you start to treat yourself in a much gentler kind of way, really?
It's a great point about, yes, how we talk to ourselves and how we treat our own nervous system on a day-to-day basis when living with pain. Let me put that question also to Fiona and Nikki, who have their own experience of dialing down your nervous system. Fiona, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I think everything that's been said so far is absolutely spot on, and I think my advice would be to say keep it simple, because it can be so overwhelming when you learn about all of these different things, and there's so many different areas of your life to maybe look at. And actually what you're trying to do is make yourself feel safe, and feeling safe was at the heart of my recovery. So that can be different things for different people, but for a lot of people it's things like, are you getting outside somewhere in nature that can make us feel better? Are you maybe stopping a few times a day and just checking in with how you're feeling in yourself? And one of the exercises I was taught was box breathing. So actually maybe 2 or 3 times a day, just to get started, you want to stop and just slow your breathing down, and maybe breathe in for 4 counts and hold for 4 counts and then breathe out for 4 counts, and just give yourself a few minutes to do that. And actually even some basic breathing exercises can give you a feeling of safety, and meditation as well for some people works. But really go on a journey to look at what stress have you got in your life, and what are the things that are going to start making your nervous system feel a bit safer. And it really can be very simple things that you do a few times a day. It doesn't have to be anything complicated.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Nikki, I'll come to you now. I know we've talked previously about your interest in horses, because some people might be thinking, okay, so I have to do relaxing things like meditate, which is great as well. But I guess one of your hobbies is not relaxing as such. But what would be your answer to that, and what's your opinion there?
Yeah, I mean, the horses have always been very important. Again, it's that nurturing and giving you a reason to get up and keep going. They kept me going for many years. And interestingly, the way I trained them, because I was so weak, I had to learn how to use them with positive reinforcement and breaking things down into small sort of pieces. And I actually used that a lot in my recovery with the triggers that I was having on my face. I sort of used graded exposure with positive reinforcement and safety talk. And as Fiona says, it's about making yourself feel safe and your nervous system feel safe. So that was a very big part of it, how I worked it. and it's linking the way you talk with the way your nervous system reacts. So for instance, this morning I woke up, I have a big day today, not just with this, but with other things. And I woke up with a headache this morning. And again, it was about not panicking, the way I talk to myself, soothing myself, and, you know, linking that a condition, it's almost a conditioned response. I used to panic, it winds up the nervous system and you end up in more pain. This morning, I actually did the opposite. It was like, oh, okay, soothe myself, talk myself down. That's based on a lot of years of hard work and understanding this, but it shows how easy it is. But again, that sense of safety and the lack of fear of the pain, you know, understanding that it doesn't actually mean anything's wrong, was important for me. So
absolutely, I guess that ties back with what Katie was saying there, not avoiding the battle of towards the pain, you know, avoiding fighting the pain and having that mindset. That's brilliant to hear. There's a question, I'll come back to you, Katie. Nusa asks about CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. She says she's heard it's been useful for pain in the past. It's not something we've mentioned in the presentation itself, but is it something you'd recommend to somebody living with pain?
Yeah, I think now there's a big move with what we call like third wave CBT approaches within the area of chronic pain, and I think that's where the evidence base is. And I'd imagine that most pain services across the UK, certainly, as well as, you know, myself working in the Isle of Man, would adopt probably, you know, more of a third wave approach. So that would be things like acceptance and commitment therapy. It would be compassion focused therapy, and really moving towards, you know, some of what the other people have said on the panel around, you know, thinking about mindfulness, about breath work. And there's some, you know, we've never been so well off really about what promoting well-being and some of the good quality psychological literature that's out there. There's some excellent sort of resources, really great podcasts. So it isn't, for me, psychology isn't always about the need for therapy. Sometimes it's getting your hands on really good quality psychological literature. So that might be in the form of bibliotherapy. It's, you know, books that you can access, and the self-help workbooks that often you have to write into them, and some of them are accompanied by, you know, CDs and apps that you can get for your phone, and free resources online. You know, I would really encourage people to look down that avenue. And then obviously if you want to, if you feel you need to complement that by seeing somebody as well, you know, yes, by all means, but sometimes the quality of the stuff that's out there is so good, you know, actually people can make great headway by themselves using that.
Excellent, thanks very much, Katie. The question has come in just as you were talking there, Katie, which I'll put to you, Chris. When you're living with pain, you can be tempted to use possibly something like alcohol to dull down that sensation. And this person is saying maybe it's not the best idea. Would you mind talking a little bit about possibly the effects that might have on someone's pain?
Yeah, certainly, Flick. And I think it's a really, really important point, isn't it? I mean, medicines like, you know, medicines or drugs that influence our nervous system and how it functions. You know, I think we use them for good reason. You know, we try them for good reason because we want it to benefit. We want to help our pain, of course. I think, as I mentioned before, medicines aren't that precise. You know, we're not in an area yet where we've got, you know, really targeted kind of molecular based treatments for people's individual pain. All of the medicines that we use currently are things that we know penetrate the nervous system, and they will either facilitate the nervous system in some way, make it behave in a certain way, or make it not behave in a certain way. And so it's pretty kind of, I use the analogy, it's a bit like using sledgehammers to fix watches, because we don't know what effect it's going to have. For one person, it might have a brilliant effect. For another person, it might not have. A great example is we look at a medicine like duloxetine, which is used quite a lot in pain clinics. If you have 100 people who have chronic primary type of pain and we use duloxetine, only 25 of them generally will get some benefit, and of those 25, 8 of them will get reasonable benefit. So for the rest, the other 75, it doesn't generally help. And that highlights really that this isn't a precision treatment, it's a global effect on the nervous system. So alcohol is no different. Alcohol has a global suppressant effect on our nervous system, and it can suppress areas that would normally be responsible for suppressing other areas. And so it can make those areas not function. That's why sometimes people become disinhibited if they have a lot of alcohol, because the normal checks and balances to stop those kinds of things happening, alcohol has stopped those things. So it's a complex mix, and it's really individual. So some people can get benefit from that in a short term, but it's much more about, I guess, we talk about, Cormac talks about kind of fire extinguisher, that's kind of in the here and now, putting things out. I guess we'd be more interested in how we look at preventative strategies from stopping the fire start in the first place. And so all of the things that we've got on the market medicines wise, it generally doesn't do that, because we're after a reprogramming of our nervous system, and the medicines just aren't precise enough to do that. They'll smoke screen the nervous system. The things that will make a big difference, I guess, are the kind of things that we talk about, for kind of the longer term stuff. So yeah, again, really long answer, I'm sorry. Alcohol is something that will it will suppress our nervous system, and it will mask stuff. The best asset I think we've got to manage pain in the long term and hopefully recover or make some kind of inroads to recovery is an intact nervous system. That's the best thing that we've got, I think.
Excellent, thank you very much. There's been a couple of questions that have emerged with themes about healthcare professionals and talking to them, and hopefully the audience will be pleased to know that we do deliver this kind of training and education to healthcare professionals in various different settings. What I want to do is put to both Fiona and Nikki your advice for, I guess, talking about your experience within the healthcare system, how you've maybe addressed any conflicts or disagreements that you've had with healthcare professionals, or when you've encountered professionals who haven't got this understanding. What would be your tips to someone in the audience? Nikki, can I come to you first on that?
Yeah, okay. It's interesting. I've been treated by some amazing healthcare professionals, and one in particular made a very big impact on my sort of journey towards recovery by taking very much this sort of this way of being, encouraged me to be more social, and she was fantastic. And the frustration was I saw her once every 9 months if I was lucky. If I'd seen her much more regularly, it would have been much more sort of useful, I think. But she was great, and even all the surgeries I had, which weren't the sort of didn't actually end up helping me, they were all done for the best reasons. But I look back and a lot of the language wasn't helpful, sort of making me feel like there was never going to be any change, and that I should stop looking for any way of sort of moving forward, which was hard. Since I recovered, to be honest, I've not been in a position to really talk to them about it. I've come across sort of quite a lack of curiosity, unfortunately. I think that's partly systemic in the lack of time that people have. I then got into a bit of trouble with coming off opioids, and that's been very difficult. And I'm actually now to the point where I struggle with talking to healthcare professionals at all, which is a shame. But it's trying to get to be heard, and sort of just encouraging that listening and a more sort of coaching attitude in the healthcare professionals. And again, continuity helps. So if you can try and see the right person sort of for longer, would be my advice.
Thank you very much, Nikki. As you say, yeah, it's a mixed experience. I think that will resonate with people in the audience. Fiona, I'll come to you on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think I mean, like a lot of people with pain, I've had some very, very difficult experiences with healthcare professionals, and used to be very frightened of doctors as a result. And I think with pain in particular, I'm definitely not the only person who felt like I was being told, well, it's all in your head, or you know, you're wanting attention, or you're wanting to sort of get out of working, or you know, there's a lot of misunderstanding among the medical profession, and I think I would say now that I'm recovered, I think it's always worth having an open mind when you go to doctors, because actually most doctors do want to help you, and there are more things to try nowadays. And I think that going in and having that open mind that person's going to be nice and kind and they're going to listen to you is going to get you off to a good start. But I think the best thing about all of this is that there are so many things you can do on your own to explore changing your pain. And for me, you know, getting rid of my pain, it didn't involve seeing a doctor, having had years of going to doctors and trying to be helped. And so I would say that it's great if you have a supportive doctor and if they're listening to you. But if you don't, you aren't on your own. There's lots of other people who understand what you're going through. There's lots of science, and that you can, you know, resources that touch on this science. You can access yourself at home, have a go with it. Maybe update your doctor so that they know all the different things now that they're out there and all the support. But yeah, I think I just would offer sympathy to anybody who's struggling to feel listened to or believed or supported, because at the moment we've got so much more work to do. And I think that's where Flippin' Pain is doing such great work in educating people and yeah, giving out this message that your pain is real, because actually most people just need to hear that and need to know that they are believed. But yeah, I think there's lots of great doctors, and hopefully as the years go by, we're going to have so many more people who they get this work, and they can actually you know, when you go into your GP and you say, actually the pain's really bad this week, they will be better educated maybe around how to talk to you and resources to point you to, and so there's lots of hope, I think.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Fiona. A great message to end on there, a message of hope. So thank you very much to everyone in the audience who's joined us this evening. Thank you hugely to my panel, and also to Professor Cormac Ryan for the presentation tonight, and all the team in the background but working backstage of our webinar. As you'll see on your screen now, you did a pre-event survey. We'd love you to fill in a post-event survey, if that's okay. It'll just take you a few minutes. So you can either hold your camera phone up to the screen with that QR code on, with the camera on the screen, or the link is going in the chat now. We'll also be sending that out in the email that goes out afterwards as well, with the recording. So yeah, if we could fill that in, that would be fantastic. If you would like to see more of what we do, you can head to our website, www.flippinpain.co.uk, or you can email us, info@flippinpain.co.uk. Follow us at Flippin' Pain across the board there as well. And as we say, you'll be able to watch this again on our YouTube channel and on our website in the coming days. So thank you very, very much for joining us once again. Have a good rest of the night. Thank you.